Hello, welcome to Phantom Homicide, the Amityville horror, murder, mystery, and the house that wouldn't die.
Amityville, Long Island, New York. If you drive past 112 Ocean Avenue today, you'll see, well, a handsome Dutch colonial house, actually. It's quiet, kind of discreet, sitting there near the water.
Well, it's pretty normal, doesn't it?
Exactly. It looks like the ultimate suburban dream, really. But this location, this seemingly peaceful five-bedroom home, especially with those distinctive quarter-round windows,
Menacing eyes, yeah.
Yeah.
Iconic.
This house has been just carved into the American consciousness, hasn't it? It's like the absolute epicenter of terror. It's
Yeah.
a place where these two completely distinct realities just collided head-on. You've got horrific murder and then this enduring myth.
For decades, yeah. The name Amityville
Mm.
basically becomes synonymous with this overwhelming dread, this sense of profound wrongness. And our mission in this deep dive, really, is to, well, perform the necessary surgery on the source material, if you will. We have to carefully unpack the documented records first, the ones detailing a verifiable, horrific six-person familicide committed back in 1974.
The hard facts.
The hard facts. And then we need to contrast that stark reality with the subsequent story, the 28-day flight from the house by the Lutz family in 1975, based on their claims of, well, paranormal terror.
Two incredibly different narratives tied to the same four walls.
Precisely. And we're wading through decades of conflicting accounts here. We've got criminal evidence, psychiatric evaluations, the family's own stories, neighbor testimonies, or lack thereof.
And let's be honest, the massive financial incentives that definitely followed, money plays a role here.
Oh, absolutely. You can't ignore that aspect.
So this deep dive is really tailor-made for you, the listener, if you want to cut through all those layers of myth, the very lucrative rumor mill, and try to understand the facts as best we know them, understand the highly probable frauds, perhaps, and also explore the genuine psychological mysteries that still kind of swirl around what actually transpired inside those walls.
Because even if you dismiss the supernatural, there are still questions, deep psychological questions.
Definitely. So to understand the legend, the whole Amityville horror phenomenon, we absolutely have to confront the reality first, the crime that started it all. Okay, let's unpack this darkness that really descended upon Amityville on that chilly night in November 1974.
Right, November 13th, 1974.
Mhm.
And the timeline of the discovery itself is critical because it immediately establishes the central figure of this entire tragedy, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr.,
Yeah, the son.
the eldest son, 23 years old, and it was around 6:30 p.m. Now, the police didn't get a call from 112 Ocean Avenue. That's important.
No, the call came from a bar, right? Henry's Bar, local place.
Exactly. It was Butch himself who burst into the bar. And the sources quote him as yelling something like, "You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot." Pretty dramatic entrance.
Definitely gets attention. And he convinced a few people, their patrons, including his friend Joe Yeswit, to go back to the house with him.
Right. And it wasn't even Butch who made the call. It was Yeswit who actually went inside, found the bodies. I mean, can you imagine? And he made the official emergency call to the police.
Stepping into that scene, unimaginable.
The scene itself was, well, an absolute horror show and an immediate mystery on multiple levels. 6 members of the DeFeo family systematically murdered.
The whole family, practically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You have Ronald DeFeo Sr. and Louise DeFeo, both 43, and then their 4 children. Dawn, who was 18, Allison 13, Mark 12, and little John Matthew, just 9 years old.
It's just a complete obliteration. The entire family structure gone.
In one night, yeah.
Yeah.
And the weapon. The weapon choice speaks volumes about the horrifying efficiency, maybe even the calculated nature of the crime.
What was it again? A rifle.
A .35 caliber lever-action Marlin 336C rifle. It's a hunting rifle, not a small handgun, you know. This is a powerful weapon.
It's so loud.
Very loud.
Yeah.
And the details. All 6 victims were killed around 3 a.m. that morning. The sources note Ronald Sr. and Louise, the parents, each got 2 shots. The kids, though, just single shots each.
2 for the parents, 1 for each child. That sounds methodical, not panicked.
That's exactly what investigators thought. It suggests a controlled shooter, someone moving room to room deliberately. But then the physical evidence at the scene throws up these 2 major, just baffling contradictions, things that remain mysteries even today.
Okay, what are they?
The first one, we kind of call it the eerie silence. How do you fire a high-powered rifle, 6, maybe 8 times if you missed or double-tapped someone else? How do you do that in a quiet residential neighborhood, houses nearby, and no one reports hearing gunshots?
Right. I mean, 3 a.m., things are usually pretty quiet. A rifle shot would carry.
You'd absolutely think so. Now, there are theories, of course. People have speculated, though there's never been any concrete proof, that maybe Butch used some kind of like crude silencer. A pillow, maybe? Something.
Possible, I guess.
Others point out the house itself is pretty large. It's set back a bit from the road. Or maybe, just maybe, it was stormy that night. Heavy rain, high winds.
Yeah.
Maybe that could mask the sound.
Plausible deniability, maybe. But still, 8 shots. Seems unlikely nothing was heard.
It stretches credulity, yeah. But the silence wasn't just external, outside the house. It was internal, too. And that leads to the second massive contradiction. The state of the victims themselves.
They were found.
Exactly. All 6 were found lying face down in their bed.
Face down. Okay, that's specific.
Very specific. And none of them showed any signs of a struggle. No defensive wounds, nothing knocked over in the rooms, it looked like. Well, either they were all deeply asleep, completely unaware, or they were somehow incapacitated, drugged, maybe, compliant, unable to fight back.
Okay, but did the evidence support drugging?
That's where it gets even weirder. Butch DeFeo himself, during his interrogation, he actually claimed he had drugged his family, maybe put sedatives in their dinner the night before.
So he offered that up?
He did, but the initial police investigation, and crucially, the subsequent toxicology reports, they found absolutely zero evidence of sedatives. None. In any of the victims.
No drugs. Okay, so that theory is out. What else?
It gets even stranger. Physical evidence, like the position of the bodies or maybe something forensic investigators saw, suggested that Louise DeFeo, the mother, and her daughter Allison, the 13-year-old, they were actually awake when they were killed.
Awake? But no struggle. How is that possible? You hear a rifle shot in your house, you see someone with a gun.
Exactly. Why would 2 people, apparently conscious, suddenly case with the roar of a rifle, maybe seeing other family members already shot, why would they offer zero resistance, make no sound, suffer no defensive wounds? It doesn't add up.
It really doesn't. That's genuinely chilling. One of the most disturbing, unexplained parts of the whole DeFeo massacre, really. Hashtag 1.2, the killer's changing narrative.
Yeah, that silence, both internal and external, it's profound. But the mystery of the silence, it was pretty quickly overshadowed when Butch DeFeo's initial story just completely fell apart.
Right. His first explanation wasn't that he did it. He tried to blame someone else.
Immediately. His first claim to the police was a lie. He said the killings were carried out by a mob hitman. He even named the guy Louis Fellini.
A specific name. Wow. Why did the police doubt that? Just because it sounds convenient?
Well, partly convenience, but also Butch's own history. The police knew his relationship with his father, Ronald Sr., was notoriously volatile. We're talking intense physical fights, constant verbal abuse. It was ugly.
Okay, so there was no animosity there.
Serious animosity. Plus, Butch was known to have substance abuse problems. Heavy use of heroin, LSD, that paints a picture of instability, and crucially, the supposed hitman, Louis Fellini. He had an immediate, rock-solid, verifiable alibi. He wasn't even in the state.
So the mob hit story lasted how long?
Not long at all. After about, 30 hours or so of pretty continuous interrogation, DeFeo cracked. He confessed. He admitted he carried out all the killings himself.
And did you say why or how it felt?
He gave the detectives that chilling line, the one everyone remembers. Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast. Suggests a kind of frenzy, maybe.
Maybe. But what happened after it went so fast, that's telling too, isn't it?
Incredibly telling. What really struck the investigators wasn't just the confession of rage, but the unbelievable calmness and calculation that apparently followed the murders.
He didn't just run.
Oh, no. Quite the opposite. The source material details his actions very clearly. After systematically killing his entire family, he didn't flee in panic. He admitted, quite calmly, to cleaning up the scene, showering, changing his blood-stained clothes.
Methodical.
Extremely. And then meticulously disposing of the crucial evidence. The rifle, the bloody clothing, the spent bullet cartridges. He gathered them up and dumped them into storm drains in a nearby canal, trying to get rid of everything. And then he went to work that day, as if it were just another Tuesday.
Went to work after murdering 6 people.
Yes, this extreme shift, from that supposed moment of lethal rage, it went so fast, to this complete calculated composure, the cleanup, the disposal, going to work. It's a critical indicator. Psychiatrists would later point to this as classic antisocial personality disorder. It directly contradicts any later claims he might make about being, compelled by voices or demons or insanity.
Because it shows awareness, planning, covering tracks.
Exactly. Awareness of wrongdoing. Which leads to the big question. If it wasn't supernatural compulsion or legal insanity,
Yeah.
what was the motive? Why did he do it?
The prosecution had a theory, right? Something about money.
Yeah, the prosecution suggested financial gain. They noted that DeFeo had apparently made inquiries about collecting on his father's life insurance policies. There was money involved, potentially quite a bit.
Okay, money's a classic motive, but you mentioned the abuse.
Right. And while money was almost certainly a factor, maybe the rationalization, the pathology, seems deeper. That intense hatred, the years of physical abuse he reportedly suffered from Ronald Sr., that likely served as the immediate, powerful trigger.
So mix of rage and greed, maybe.
It seems likely. The sources really point towards a combination. A deep-seated antisocial personality disorder, probably exacerbated by his heavy drug dependency that provides the underlying pathology, the capability, and then the life insurance, the potential inheritance that might have provided the more conscious rationalization, the reason why.
Regardless of the internal trigger, though, that cleanup.
That cleanup is key. The systematic disposal of the evidence. It demonstrates a clear awareness of wrongdoing, a clear intent to escape the consequences, and that awareness would become absolutely central when it came to his trial defense.
Okay, so the investigation points to Butch. He confesses. The evidence seems clear despite the mysteries like the silence. Which brings us to the trial. It started pretty quickly, didn't it?
Less than a year after the murders, yeah.
Yeah.
October 14, 1975. And DeFeo's defense lawyer, a guy named William Weber, remember that name, it becomes important later.
Weber.
Got it. Weber immediately went for an insanity plea, not guilty by reason of insanity. It was pretty much their only viable defense, given the confession and the evidence.
And how did they argue insanity? What was the basis?
The defense's whole case really rested on the testimony of their psychiatrist, Dr. Daniel Schwartz. Schwartz claimed that DeFeo essentially had no memory of the actual crime. He suggested Butch was in some kind of dissociative state, maybe hearing voices, reacting to perceived threats that weren't real, basically not in control of his actions.
He didn't know what he was doing. That kind of defense?
Pretty much. But the prosecution, they were ready for this. They had their own psychiatrist, Dr. Harold Zolan. And Zolan countered Schwartz's assessment very forcefully.
What was Zolan's take?
Zolan argued, yeah, DeFeo definitely used drugs, heroin, LSD, and yes, he absolutely fit the profile for antisocial personality disorder. But, and this is the crucial distinction Zolan maintained, DeFeo was fully aware of his actions at the time of the crime. He knew what he was doing was wrong.
And the proof of that awareness was?
The cleanup.
Yeah.
The state used that methodical cleanup. The showering, changing clothes, meticulously disposing of the weapon and cartridges, even fabricating that initial Louis Fleeny alibi. They used all of that as irrefutable proof of intent, premeditation, consciousness of guilt.
So the legal battle came down to that fine line. Insane and unaware versus aware but, well, evil.
That was the crux of it, legally speaking. Was he insane, meaning incapable of understanding the nature and consequences of his actions, unable to know right from wrong? Or was he aware of it all and simply chose to commit murder?
And the jury?
The jury didn't buy the insanity defense. On November 21st, 1975, they found Ronald DeFeo Jr. guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder.
Second degree, not first. Why?
Often that comes down to proving premeditation to the highest standard versus extreme emotional disturbance or intent to kill without that level of planning. But make no mistake, the sentence reflected the horror. Judge Thomas Stark, when sentencing him, delivered this absolutely scathing assessment. He declared the murders the most heinous murders committed in Suffolk County since its founding. Strong words.
Wow. And the sentence itself?
6 consecutive terms of 25 years to life. Consecutive, meaning he'd have to serve each sentence one after the other.
So basically, life in prison, no chance of parole for ever, pretty much.
Effectively, yes. That conviction meant he was going to spend the rest of his natural life behind bars, unless he could somehow find a way to challenge or vacate that judgment later on. Hashtag 2.2. The shifting accounts of the crime. Here's where it gets really compelling.
So the trial ends. He's convicted, sentenced to life. You'd think that's the end of the criminal story, right? But for Butch DeFeo, it seems like it was just the beginning of this whole other saga.
Absolutely. The conviction was the official end, legally speaking, for a while. But personally, for Butch, it kicked off decades of him trying to rewrite history from inside prison. The source material is fascinating here. It shows he constantly changed his story, desperately trying to shift the blame, cast doubt, do anything to get out or at least muddy the waters.
Okay, so when did the story first start to change significantly?
The first major, really public shift came quite a bit later, actually. In a 1986 interview he gave to the newspaper Newsday.
1986, so over a decade after the conviction.
Exactly. He'd had a long time to think or maybe confabulate. And in this interview, he completely threw out the lone killer narrative he'd confessed to. Totally jettisoned it.
So what was the new version?
This new version was, well, complex. He claimed it was actually his sister, Dawn, the 18-year-old, who killed their father, Ronald Sr., first.
Dawn killed the father. Why?
He didn't really give a clear motive for her, but then he claimed that their mother, Louise, distraught after finding Ronald Sr. dead, then killed the other siblings, the younger
The
ones.
mother killed the other kids. This is elaborate.
Wildly elaborate.
Ah,
And then, according to this 1986 version, Butch said he was only responsible for killing his mother, Louise, after she had killed the kids.
okay, wait. So in this version, he only admits to killing his mother after she supposedly killed 3 of her own children, and his sister killed his father.
That was the 86 story, yes.
Yeah.
And his justification for taking the full rap back in 74 and staying quiet for 12 years, it was just as incredible.
What did he claim?
He claimed he was afraid of his own family's connections. He specifically named his maternal grandfather, Michael Brigante Sr., and also his father's uncle, Peter DeFeo.
Peter DeFeo, wasn't he connected?
Yes, Peter DeFeo was a known Kapoor regime, a captain in the powerful Genovese crime family. So Butch implied that if he had implicated his mother or his sister back then, these powerful relatives, possibly linked to the mob, would have had him killed in prison or something.
Using the family's alleged mob ties as a shield for his earlier confession.
Wow. It's quite a twist. But what's almost more fascinating, or maybe just bizarre, is the audacity of adding clearly fictional details to try and bolster this new story.
Fictional details? Like what?
To support his new timeline, DeFeo asserted in this interview that he was actually married at the time of the murders back in '74 to a woman named Geraldine Gates.
Married, there was no mention of a wife before.
None whatsoever. And he didn't stop there. He claimed Geraldine's brother, a guy named Richard Raimondo, was with him that night, providing him with an alibi for crucial parts of the evening when the murders supposedly went down, according to his new sequence.
Okay, hold on. So now he's not only blaming his dad's sister and mother, but he's also invented a wife and a brother-in-law who conveniently back him up. I mean, why? Why would any lawyer let him put forward something so easily disproven, presumably?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It seems the goal wasn't necessarily to sound rational or even believable in the long run. The goal was probably just to create enough doubt, enough shifting blame to maybe trigger a new hearing, which he eventually managed to do.
He got another hearing based on this stuff.
He used these evolving stories to file what's called a 440 motion in 1990. Now, for you listening, a 440 motion, basically it's a legal petition. A convicted defendant files it trying to get their conviction overturned or at least re-examined, usually claiming there's new evidence or maybe errors were made at the original trial that weren't brought up then.
Okay, so the 86 interview was maybe laying the groundwork for this legal move. What story did he tell in the 440 motion? Was it the same one?
Close, but no cigar. He tweeted again. In the 1990 motion, he offered yet another version. This time he claimed it was Dawn and an unknown, unnamed assailant who killed the parents and the younger siblings.
But unknown assailant now. Okay.
And in this version, Butch insisted the only person he killed was Dawn. And even that, he claimed, was an accident. It happened during a struggle over the rifle after he discovered what she and the mystery person had done.
Accidental killing of Dawn during a struggle. Got it. And did he submit anything to back this up? What about the wife and brother-in-law?
He did. Richard Raimondo, the supposed brother-in-law, actually submitted a sworn affidavit to the court supporting Butch's story. This was meant to be the new evidence.
An affidavit? So Raimondo did exist.
Well, this is where this attempt at legal maneuvering just spectacularly blew up in DeFeo's face. Judge Stark, the original judge who sentenced him, presided over the 440 hearing, and he was not impressed.
What happened?
The Suffolk County District Attorney's Office came prepared. They presented concrete evidence showing that Richard Raimondo was essentially a phantom, a manufactured character. He didn't exist under that name, at least not in any way connected to this case or Geraldine Gates.
So the affidavit was bogus?
Completely bogus. And it got worse for DeFeo. The DA's office also proved that Geraldine Gates, the woman he claimed was his wife back in 1974, she was actually living upstate New York at the time, married to someone else entirely.
Oh, wow.
And she only married Butch DeFeo in 1989, while he was already in prison, specifically, it seemed, to support this fabricated 440 motion narrative.
So the whole wife and brother-in-law alibi was constructed years later?
Total fabricated, years after the fact. Judge Stark's ruling denying the motion was absolutely decisive and frankly scathing. He stated he found the testimony of the defendant, DeFeo, and his supposed witnesses to be false and fabricated. He basically reaffirmed the original jury's assessment of DeFeo's character, that he was a liar.
And Stark specifically mentioned other evidence too, right? Something about a girlfriend.
Yes. Judge Stark pointed out that DeFeo's actual girlfriend at the time of the murders, a woman named Mindy Weiss, had testified consistently that she was with him constantly during that summer and fall of '74. Her testimony completely destroyed the possibility of him having some secret wife and child living in New Jersey, as he claimed in some versions. It just didn't happen.
Okay, so the 440 motion was a massive failure. You'd think that would be the end of the changing stories.
You would think.
Yeah.
But the lies just kept evolving, kept getting darker, actually. Around the year 2000, DeFeo cooperated with an author named Rick Osuna for a book called The Night the DeFeos Died. And for this book, Butch provided perhaps his darkest, most complex narrative yet.
Darker than blaming his dead mother and sister. What now?
In this version, he alleged that he and his sister Dawn committed the murders together, but not alone. They supposedly had help from two friends named Augie DeGenero and Bobby Kilsky.
Okay, so now it's him, Dawn, and two friends. What was the supposed motive this time?
Get this. He claimed they did it because his parents, Ronald Sr. and Louise, were plotting to kill him, Butch. So it was self-defense, preemptive strike, sort of.
His parents were plotting to kill him. Where did that come from?
Out of thin air, it seems. But the story gets even more convoluted. In this version, after they supposedly killed the parents, Butch claimed that Dawn then murdered the younger children, all by herself.
Dawn killed the kids. Why would she do that?
His explanation: to eliminate any witnesses to the parents' murders, cold-blooded. And then, according to this 2000 account, Butch claimed he discovered what Dawn had done to the kids, flew into a rage, and shot her.
So in this version, he kills Dawn out of rage after she killed the siblings, and they all killed the parents with help. My head is spinning.
It's designed to spin your head, probably. It's just layer upon layer of blame shifting. But this specific claim, the one involving Dawn more actively, led to one of the most persistent factual disputes that still pops up sometimes. It's known as the Dawn gunpowder controversy.
Ah, right. People claim there was evidence Dawn fired a gun.
Exactly. Proponents of DeFeo's innocence, or at least supporters of the idea that he didn't act alone, they seized on the fact that forensic analysis found traces of unburned gunpowder on Dawn DeFeo's nightgown. They argued this proved she had discharged a firearm, making her an active participant, maybe even a killer herself.
Okay, gunpowder on her nightgown. That sounds potentially significant. How is that explained at the trial?
This is a really critical technical detail, and it's important for you, the listener, to understand the science here. The ballistics expert who testified at the original trial, a man named Alfred Della Penna, addressed this directly, and his finding was later reaffirmed by other experts who reviewed the case.
What did he say?
Della Penna explained that unburned gunpowder residue is expelled from the muzzle of a weapon when it's fired. It sprays forward. It doesn't typically come out near the firing pin or the breech where the shooter's hands or body would be.
Okay. So gunpowder on her nightgown meant?
It meant she was only in proximity to the muzzle when the rifle was discharged near her. It proved absolutely nothing about who was holding the rifle. It only proved she was close to the end of the barrel when it went off, a finding completely consistent with her being the victim of a point-blank or near point-blank rifle shot.
So it didn't mean she fired the gun, just that a gun was fired very close to her.
Precisely. And when you combine that with the fact that the medical examiner found absolutely no defensive wounds on Dawn, no signs that she was involved in a struggle, it reinforces the original narrative. DeFeo was the lone systematic killer. And all these later conflicting, increasingly baroque stories, they were almost certainly just desperate attempts by a convicted murderer to escape his life sentence.
Okay, so the human story, the crime itself, it's brutal, it's tragic, and DeFeo's guilt seems pretty firmly established despite his later lies. The legal system dealt with that, but then the narrative takes this sharp turn, doesn't it?
A massive turn. Once the criminal chapter was, for all intents and purposes, closed, and maybe because it generated so much notoriety, the stage was set for a completely different kind of story. And you can definitely argue that the massive potential financial incentive for a new narrative kind of took over, pulling us out of true crime and deep into the realm of the supernatural.
And this is where the Lutz family enters the picture. They're the ones who bought the house, right? The house that just wouldn't die, as the title says. Hashtag tag 3.1, the house and the purchase. December 1975.
Exactly. Just 13 months after those 6 silent deaths, George and Kathy Lutz bought 112 Ocean Avenue.
13 months. That's not a lot of time for the memory to fade.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They purchased it in December 1975 for $80,000. Now, that was considered a bargain price, even then. And the reason it was a bargain was precisely because of its horrifying, very recent history.
Yeah.
Everyone knew it happened there.
They knew. They went in knowing 6 people were murdered in those rooms.
Oh, absolutely. It was public knowledge. They moved in on December 18th, 1975, along with Kathy's 3 children from a previous marriage, Daniel, Christopher, and little Missy. And adding another layer of, well, creepiness, they even purchased most of the DeFeo family's furniture that had been left behind for just $400.
Wait, they bought the murder victim's furniture?
According to the sources, yes. Beds, dressers, other items, they moved right in and used the DeFeo stuff.
Okay, that just feels unwise. I mean, psychologically, even if you don't believe in ghosts.
It certainly adds a dimension, doesn't it? Now, sources suggest George Lutz, he apparently had some background or interest in the occult, paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
And he seemed confident initially that they could cleanse the house, overcome any lingering negativity. But according to their claims, the terror began almost immediately.
How soon?
Pretty much day one. And it focused first on their attempt to purify the house spiritually.
The blessing. The priest incident.
That's the one. The infamous story involving Father Pecoraro, though he was called Father Mancuso in J. Anson's book, likely to protect his privacy at the time.
Right. So what did Father Mancuso claim happened?
The Lutzes, even though they weren't apparently very active churchgoers, decided it would be a good idea to have the house blessed before they properly settled in. So Father Mancuso came over. And the story goes, the moment he entered the second floor, started flicking the holy water, began the blessing rites. He claimed he was suddenly struck by this sharp pain, felt an intense chill, and heard this powerful, distinct masculine voice roar at him, "Get out!
Get out! Just like in the movies.
Exactly like the movies, which likely got it from the book, which got it from the Lutzes and possibly the priest. Now, according to the Lutz narrative, the priest fled the house immediately. But interestingly, he didn't warn the Lutzes off straight away. Maybe he feared they wouldn't move in, or maybe he wasn't sure what he experienced.
If he didn't tell them, don't live here.
Not initially. Instead, he supposedly called George a few days later, around December 24th, Christmas Eve. And his advice was specific. Stay out of the second floor sewing room. Just avoid that room.
And that room was significant because...
That sewing room had been the bedroom of the 2 youngest DeFeo boys, Mark and John Matthew, the ones killed in their beds.
Okay, so stay out of the murdered kids' room. Got it.
But the priest's alleged ordeal didn't end when he left the property. The story continues that after leaving 112 Ocean Avenue, Father Mancuso became physically ill. He claimed to develop a sudden high fever, and painful blisters erupted on his hands.
It blisters.
Yes, and the book really sensationalized this detail, describing them as resembling stigmata, the wounds of Christ.
Seriously, stigmata.
That was the implication pushed in the narrative. Now, it's crucial to point out this entire event with the priest is heavily, heavily disputed. Father Pecoraro himself later provided contradictory statements, even sworn affidavits, about whether he actually even entered the house that day or if he just spoke to George Lutz by phone from the rectory. His story wavered.
Ah, okay. So the get out and the stigmata might not have happened quite like the legend says.
It's highly questionable based on his own later accounts, but true or not, the story of a Catholic priest being physically repelled by a demonic presence that served as the absolute perfect, terrifying setup for everything the Lutzes claimed happened over the next 28 days. It established the house wasn't just tragic, it was actively malevolent. Hashtag 3.2, the catalog of phenomena, a deep dive into the horror claims.
Okay, so the priest incident, whether embellished or not, sets the stage. The Lutzes are now in the house, maybe feeling vulnerable. What happened next? Did things escalate slowly, or...?
According to their account, the narrative shifted pretty quickly from this ambiguous fear, this warning from the priest, to very visceral, very personalized horror. The phenomena allegedly escalated almost daily, and it seemed to be defined, or at least marked, by this powerful, recurring temporal anchor. The 3:15 a.m. wake-up call.
3.1 feet a.m., why that time?
That was believed, or at least claimed, to be the approximate time that Ronald DeFeo Jr. carried out the murder.
Ah, the time of death. Okay.
So George Lutz claimed he started waking up repeatedly, night after night, bolt upright, right at 3:15 a.m., filled with this extreme sense of dread, cold sweats, and weirder still, he claimed he felt this irresistible compulsion, his words, to get out of bed, go downstairs, walk out to the boathouse by the canal, and just check on it.
Check the boathouse. Why? Was there something in it?
No reason given. It suggests this bizarre, almost ritualistic behavior, doesn't it? Something compelling him, tied perhaps subconsciously or supernaturally to the time and maybe even the location where DeFeo disposed of the evidence.
That's deeply unsettling. What else? What were the phenomena like inside the house?
The sources, particularly Jay Anson's book based on the Lutz's tapes, paint this picture of just utter chaos. Sensory overload. The family claimed they started witnessing these bizarre, inexplicable physical manifestations.
Like what? Give me examples.
Okay, they reported massive swarms of flies, houseflies, appearing suddenly inside the house, despite it being the dead of winter, December and January. And these flies supposedly congregated primarily in that second-floor sewing room.
The room the priest warned them about.
The very same room. Flies in winter. It's odd, certainly.
Definitely odd. What else?
Then there were the really grotesque claims, things that sound ripped from a horror movie. Finding this strange green gelatin-like substance, like slime, oozing down the walls in certain areas or appearing suddenly on door handles.
Green slime. Okay, now we're in full B-movie territory.
It sounds like it, doesn't it? They also claimed the water in the toilets would sometimes turn pitch black, inexplicably. And in one famous account, Kathy Lutz hung a crucifix on the wall.
Standard practice if you think your house is haunted, I guess.
Right. But she claimed it repeatedly turned itself upside down on the wall. And when she tried to write it one time, it allegedly burned her hand, leaving a physical red mark.
A crucifix burning someone's hand. These descriptions are getting very specific, very physical.
They are. And that's crucial. Because these move beyond just vague feelings of unease, cold spots or creepy feelings. These are claims of tangible, almost verifiable horror. Even if, as we'll discuss, many were later debunked or lacked any corroboration.
Okay, what about the house itself? Any specific areas that were supposedly worse? You mentioned the sewing room.
Yes, the sewing room was a focus. But the other major one, the one that really captured the public imagination, was the discovery of the so-called Red Room down in the basement.
The Red Room. I've heard of that. What was it?
It was apparently a small hidden space, maybe 4 feet by 5 feet, concealed behind some shelving in the basement. And when they found it, it was painted entirely walls, ceiling, maybe even the floor bright red.
A hidden room painted blood red. Okay, that's inherently creepy.
Absolutely. And the Lutzes immediately claimed this room was a focal point of the house's evil. They tied it into this pervasive local myth, or maybe they helped fuel the myth that the house was built on a sacred Lenape Native American burial ground, and this red room was somehow connected to that desecration.
The old Indian burial ground trope. Is there any truth to that?
According to actual local historians and Native American leaders who were consulted later, no. They universally rejected that claim. They stated there's really insufficient historical or archaeological evidence to support the idea that any Lenape burial ground, especially one considered sacred or cursed, existed at that specific site in Amityville.
So the burial ground story is likely just story. What was the Red Room then, probably?
Well, the subsequent owners, the ones who lived there peacefully for years, they offered much more prosaic explanations. It was likely just a small storage area, maybe a root cellar or a potato cellar, something common in older homes. As for the red paint, who knows? Maybe someone used leftover paint, maybe it was meant to seal the stone against dampness, or maybe it was just some previous owner's truly bizarre decorating choice. But the Lutzes needed it to be pure evil.
Understandable if you're trying to build a narrative of terror. Did the phenomena extend to, like, personal attacks, physical stuff?
Oh, definitely. The claims escalated into direct personal, psychological, and even physical assaults. Kathy claimed at one point to have actually levitated off the bed while sleeping.
Levitated? Seriously?
That was the claim. And she also reported receiving these terrifying, unexplained physical marks on her body scratches, like claw marks, appearing overnight.
Okay, levitation and phantom claw marks. What about George?
George's experiences were perhaps even more disturbing, focusing on psychological transformation. His personality allegedly began shifting drastically. People who knew him said he became withdrawn, moody, argumentative, completely unlike himself. He developed this obsession with keeping the fireplace burning constantly, day and night, even when it wasn't particularly cold.
Obsessed with fire. That sounds symbolic.
Very, and visually striking too. He just stopped shaving. Let this wild, unkempt beard grow, which apparently made him look more menacing or perhaps more primitive.
This psychological shift, though, it's deeply disturbing. Whether it was genuinely supernatural or maybe psychological distress or even part of an act, it's unsettling.
It really is. And his internal experiences or claims were just as bizarre. George claimed he started seeing Kathy age rapidly right before his eyes, Like he'd look at her, and for a moment she'd transform into this hideous old woman with white hair and missing teeth.
That's terrifying, a personal hallucination like that?
And maybe the most chilling claim of all. George said he would sometimes look in the mirror and believe his own features were shifting, morphing, transforming to resemble Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr.
He thought he was turning into the killer.
That was his claim. A powerful, terrifying moment of identification, or maybe possession, depending on your viewpoint, identifying with the original source of the house's trauma.
Wow. And the kids, were they experiencing things too? You mentioned the daughter, Missy.
Yes, we absolutely cannot forget the experiences involving the children, especially the youngest, Missy. She famously had an invisible friend she called Jody.
Jody? Was Jody nice?
Not according to the description. Missy described Jody not as another child, but as a pig. A large pig with glowing red eyes.
A demonic pig named Jody.
It's one of the most visually enduring and frankly bizarre elements of the entire Amityville saga. And George Lutz claimed he backed this up. He said he personally saw those glowing red eyes peering in at them from outside Missy's second-floor bedroom window one night.
Glowing red pig eyes outside a second-story window? How would that even work physically?
Good question. It defies logic, but it makes for a terrifying image, doesn't it?
It certainly does. So all this stuff, the flies, the slime, the voices, the transformations, Jody the pig, it just kept building.
According to the Lutzes, yes. It all culminated absolutely dramatically on their final night in the house, January 14, 1976, just 28 days after they moved in.
The night they fled. What did they claim happened that night?
They described it as the phenomena reaching this catastrophic, unbearable peak, absolute chaos. Walls were allegedly oozing that green slime again. They claimed they heard phantom sounds like a full marching band playing downstairs. And most terrifyingly, they felt like invisible entities were physically interacting with them, pulling at their bodies, trying to hold them back.
Pulling at them. Okay, that's direct assault.
Direct, physical, terrifying assault. They claimed the horror was just too frightening to endure another moment. They grabbed only a few essential items, maybe some clothes, bundled the kids and the dog Harry into their van, and fled the house in the middle of the night, leaving almost everything else behind.
Everything. Furniture, belongings, all of it.
Pretty much all of it, according to the story. They left their possessions, the DeFeo furniture they'd bought, everything, convinced the house was possessed beyond redemption and they'd be killed if they stayed.
That image fleeing in terror, leaving everything, it's incredibly powerful. It really sells the story.
It's the climax of the narrative.
Right.
It's immediately undermined by one crucial real-world detail that often gets overlooked.
What's that?
The mover. They hired a moving company the very next day to go back and collect their belongings. And the foreman of the moving crew later stated on record that while he and his team were in the house, packing and removing all the Lutz's furniture and boxes, they experienced absolutely nothing unusual. No phenomena, no slime, no flies, no scary feelings, nothing.
So the house was completely quiet the moment the Lutzes themselves left.
According to the movers, yes. It suggests that whatever the Lutzes experienced or claimed to experience, it wasn't inherently tied to the physical structure of 112 Ocean Avenue. It seemed to follow them, or perhaps it stopped the moment the narrative needed it to stop.
Okay, so the Lutzes flee, the movers find nothing, but the story is out there now. It hits the public, the book comes out, and immediately the fight over whether it was real or hoax begins. Right.
Instantly. The moment the story of the 28-day haunting went public, the battle lines were drawn. And this is where the source material, the actual investigations and evidence, deliver probably the strongest indictment against the supernatural claims. Hashtag 4.1, the defense lawyer's bombshell.
Where do we start with the debunking? What's the biggest piece of counter-evidence?
For many people, the key witness against the haunting claims was, somewhat incredibly, Ronald DeFeo Jr.'s own defense lawyer from the murder trial, William Weber.
Weber again. The guy who tried the insanity plea, what did he say?
In 1979, a couple of years after the book became a huge bestseller, Weber gave this definitive bombshell statement to People magazine. He declared, and this is a direct quote, "I know this book is a hoax. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine."
Whoa. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine. He's saying he helped make it up. With the Lutzes.
That's exactly what he claimed. Weber alleged the entire narrative, or at least significant parts of it, was a calculated fabrication, cooked up between him and George and Kathy Lutz.
Why? What was the supposed motive for Weber to get involved in faking a ghost story?
Weber claimed it was initially conceived as part of a strategy for DeFeo. They designed this evil house defense, hoping that if they could establish the house itself was demonic or had driven DeFeo mad, they could use that as grounds to appeal his murder conviction, argue demonic compulsion or something.
So the ghost story was originally meant to help the killer.
According to Weber's 1979 statement, yes. And he implied the Lutzes went along with it, perhaps initially for that reason, or maybe seeing the potential for a lucrative book deal down the line.
How did the Lutzes react to Weber basically calling them liars and collaborators in a hoax?
Predictably, they were furious. They immediately sued Weber and others involved for defamation, invasion of privacy, mental distress, the works.
So it ended up in court.
It did. But the legal outcome wasn't great for the Lutzes. Judge Jack B. Weinstein, who presided over that civil case in 1979, ultimately dismissed the Lutzes' claims against Weber. And in his ruling, the judge expressed, quote, very serious ethical questions when lawyers become literary agents, clearly referencing Weber's involvement in the book aspect.
Ouch. So the judge didn't exactly vindicate the Lutzes. Did Weber sue back?
He did. Weber countersued the Lutzes, charging them with breach of contract, essentially saying they cut him out of the profits from the book deal they had allegedly concocted together.
Wow. It just sounds like a tangled mess of lawsuits and accusations all swirling around money.
It really does. This whole legal back and forth, Weber's confession, the lawsuits, it starkly highlights the massive financial motivation underlying the haunting claims. We can't forget Jay Anson's 1977 book, The Amityville Horror, sold an estimated 10 million copies. That's an almost unprecedented success for that kind of book back then.
10 million copies. That's a life-changing amount of money.
Absolutely. It provided a huge ongoing financial incentive for the Lutzes to maintain the illusion of truth, regardless of Weber's claims or any evidence to the contrary. The story itself became incredibly valuable. Hashtag 4.2 prosaic contradictions and investigative gaps.
Okay, so Weber's claim is a bombshell, and the money angle is strong. But what about evidence that directly contradicts the specific phenomena the Lutzes reported? Did investigators find holes in the story itself?
Oh, absolutely. When researchers and skeptics started setting the haunting claims against verifiable, real-world data, the case against the supernatural explanation becomes pretty overwhelming. We can start with something as simple as the weather.
The weather, how does that debunk anything?
Remember the claim about finding cloven hoof prints in the snow outside the house on January 4th, 1976?
Yeah, suggesting a demonic animal like the devil himself walked around the property.
Exactly. It was a key piece of physical evidence cited in the book. Really dramatic. However, researchers later went back and compiled official meteorological records for Amityville for that specific date, January 4th, 1976. And they found?
What?
There was no snow on the ground in Amityville at that time. No snowfall had occurred recently enough to leave fresh prints.
No snow. So the cloven hoof prints in the snow couldn't have happened.
Couldn't have happened, as described. This single piece of evidence, easily debunked by simple objective environmental data, strongly suggests deliberate fabrication, making up details to enhance the horror.
That's pretty damning. What else? You mentioned lack of official reports.
Yes, the absence of any official record of distress during those 28 days is equally significant. Police department records show the Lutzes never once called the police for help during that entire period.
Never. But the book and the movie always show police coming to the house being baffled or scared off.
Pure fiction. According to the actual police logs, they never requested assistance, which seems odd. If your family is under attack by demonic forces, walls are bleeding, entities are pulling at you, wouldn't you call 911?
You'd think so. What about neighbors? Did anyone else nearby see or hear anything weird?
That's another gaping hole. Despite the claims of phantom marching bands, swarms of flies visible in windows, maybe strange lights or sounds, not a single neighbor reported seeing or hearing anything unusual emanating from 112 Ocean Avenue during that 28-day period. Complete silence from the neighbors.
So the intense phenomena were supposedly happening, but only the Lutzes experienced them, and they never called for help. That strains credibility quite a bit.
It certainly does. And even really small, seemingly insignificant details in the narrative reveal signs of fictionalization, or at least carelessness with the facts.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay. Remember Father Picoro Mancuso, the priest? Researchers noticed that the description of the car he supposedly drove changed across different editions of Anson's book. In one version, it's described as an old tan Ford. In another edition, it suddenly becomes a Chevrolet Nova, then maybe back to a Ford in another printing.
They couldn't keep the priest's car straight?
Apparently not. Now, it's a tiny, petty detail, right? Who cares what car the priest drove? But it reveals that the narrative wasn't being treated as strict factual reporting. It was being massaged, edited, maybe for dramatic effect, maybe just through sloppiness, but it shows the story wasn't set in stone. It was malleable.
Interesting. Details matter when you're claiming absolute truth. But maybe the most powerful piece of evidence against the haunting isn't about the Lutzes at all, is it? It's about who came after them.
You're absolutely right. If we need one single piece of evidence that really discredits the whole idea of an inherently evil, permanently haunted house, it is the consistent testimony of the subsequent owners. And yes, we need to dedicate proper time to this because it's probably the most compelling counter-evidence available.
So who bought it after the Lutzes fled in terror?
A couple named Jim and Barbara Cromartie. They bought the house in 1977, about a year and a half after the Lutzes left. And they didn't just stay for 28 days, they lived there for 10 years, a full decade.
10 years in the Amityville horror house, and did they experience anything?
They say it publicly, repeatedly, and very firmly. Nothing weird ever happened except for people coming by because of the book and the movie. That was their quote. No ghosts, no flies, no slime, no voices, no transformations, no Jody the pig. Just annoying tourists.
10 years of nothing. That's pretty conclusive, isn't it?
It's incredibly powerful. And it's not just the Cromarties. Multiple owners who have lived in the house since the Cromarties have also publicly reported absolutely zero paranormal issues. No strange smells, no odd phenomena, no feelings of terror. The house, both structurally and it seems spiritually, returned to being just a normal, large, waterside suburban home the moment the Lutz family vacated it, and, perhaps crucially, the moment the narrative stopped being actively promoted and financially lucrative.
So the implication is, whatever the Lutzes experienced or said they experienced, it didn't reside inherently in the bricks and mortar of 112 Ocean Avenue.
The evidence strongly suggests not. It seems whatever happened was tied specifically to them or their time there, not the place itself.
Okay, so Weber's confession, the lack of snow, no police calls, the subsequent owners living peacefully. The case for a hoax seems really strong. But the story wouldn't have persisted for so long, become such a cultural phenomenon, if there wasn't something keeping the debate alive, right? There must be some ambiguous evidence, some gray areas that believers point to.
You're absolutely right. The story wouldn't have had such legs if it was completely cut and dried. There are a few pieces of evidence or alleged evidence that keep the mystery bubbling. And this brings us to the involvement of probably the most famous and certainly most controversial paranormal investigators of the era, Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Ah, the Warrens. From the Conjuring universe fame, essentially. They got involved here, too.
They did. They were involved in many high-profile alleged hauntings. They visited 112 Ocean Avenue on March 6, 1976, a few months after the Lutzes fled. They brought a crew, including psychics, photographers, people with sensors and thermometers, the whole ghost hunting setup.
And did they find anything, or claim to find anything?
They claimed to sense overwhelming negativity, demonic presences, the usual stuff for them. But the most famous and highly debated piece of evidence to come out of their investigation was a photograph, an infrared time-lapse photograph taken by a professional photographer named Gene Campbell, who was part of their team.
What did the photo supposedly show?
This photo, which interestingly only emerged publicly years after the investigation, allegedly showed a ghostly figure, a small figure like a young boy with glowing eyes, standing at the foot of the main staircase inside the house.
A demonic boy with glowing eyes, caught on film.
That's the claim. This photo has become absolutely iconic in paranormal circles. It's presented as proof positive of something otherworldly in that house. Of course, it's also faced intense skepticism. Critics question its authenticity, suggest it could be pareidolia, seeing faces in random patterns, or even deliberate manipulation or a double exposure. Some have even suggested it looks suspiciously like one of the Warrens' own investigators who was present that night.
So the photo is famous, but highly contested, not exactly slam dunk proof.
Far from it. It remains firmly in the ambiguous evidence category. Another piece often brought up by supporters is the polygraph tests.
The Lutzes took lie detector tests.
They did. George and Kathy Lutz both took polygraph tests in 1979, administered by supposedly top experts in the field at the time. And the examiners concluded that the results did not indicate deception. They essentially concluded the Lutzes appeared to be telling the truth about their experiences.
They passed the lie detector. Doesn't that support their story?
Well, this is where we have to immediately apply a critical lens, especially for you, the well-informed listener. Polygraph tests are notoriously unreliable.
Right, they're not generally admissible in court, are they?
Exactly, for good reason. A polygraph measures physiological stress responses, heart rate, breathing, perspiration. It doesn't measure truth. An individual who genuinely believes their own lie, someone who's convinced themselves that their hallucination or their fabricated story is real, they can often pass a polygraph test because they're not experiencing the stress associated with conscious deception.
So passing the test only proves they believed they were telling the truth at that moment.
Pretty much. It doesn't negate the possibility of self-delusion, shared delusion, confabulation over time, or even just sticking to a story they started for financial reasons. The polygraph results are interesting, maybe, but far from conclusive proof of paranormal events. They've just confirmed the Lutz's subjective belief in their own narrative in 1979.
Okay, so if we put aside the outright hoax explanation for a moment, and we also put aside the supernatural explanation, are there any other theories? Could psychological or environmental factors explain what the Lutzes experienced or thought they experienced, that shared terrifying ordeal?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where it gets into some fascinating scientific possibilities. We have several compelling alternative explanations that don't require ghosts or conscious fraud. First, we could look at a rare psychological phenomenon called folie à deux, or folie à famille, basically.
Wow.
Shared psychosis or shared delusional disorder.
Shared psychosis. How does that work?
It's a rare condition where delusional beliefs, and sometimes hallucinations, are transmitted from one dominant individual, the primary case, to other people who are in close association, usually family members. So one person develops a delusion, and their conviction is so strong, or their personality so dominant, that others around them adopt the same belief uncritically.
So in the Amityville case, maybe George Lutz was the primary. Given his personality shift, the waking at 3.15, the obsession.
It's certainly plausible. If George, perhaps under immense stress from the move, the house's history, financial worries, maybe even pre-existing tendencies, if he started genuinely believing he was experiencing possession, seeing transformations, feeling attacked, his wife Kathy, and perhaps more easily the young children, might have become psychologically infected by his delusion. They might have started interpreting ambiguous events through his lens, even experiencing similar hallucinations due to the power of suggestion within the family unit.
That makes George's claimed experiences, the paralysis, the visions, even more crucial, doesn't it? Were they perhaps symptoms of something else?
Very possibly. His specific descriptions, like waking up paralyzed, feeling a weight on his chest, seeing figures in the room, these align strongly with classic descriptions of sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis, I've heard of that. It's a known medical thing, right?
Yes, it's a well-documented neurological phenomenon. It happens when your brain wakes up, but your body is still in REM sleep paralysis mode. It can be incredibly frightening, often accompanied by vivid hallucinations, hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations, feelings of dread, pressure, and seeing shadowy figures. And it's often triggered or made worse by stress, irregular sleep schedules, anxieties, all things the Lutzes were likely experiencing.
Okay, so sleep paralysis could explain some of George's most intense personal experiences. What about the shared stuff? The general feeling of dread, the weird sensory things?
There are potential environmental explanations too. One intriguing possibility is infrasound.
Infrasound. What's that?
It's sound waves that are at such a low frequency, below the range of normal human hearing, like below 20 hertz. But even though we can't consciously hear it, infrasound can have measurable physical and psychological effects on people. It can be produced by all sorts of things: old plumbing, heating systems, traffic outside, wind hitting the house in a certain way.
And what does infrasound do to people?
Studies have linked exposure to infrasound to feelings of anxiety, unease, nausea, chills down the spine, intense panic, and even visual disturbances like seeing flickering movements in peripheral vision. Basically, it can create a profound sense of dread and make you feel like there's a presence nearby, even when there isn't one. It could potentially explain a whole family feeling consistently unnerved in a specific location.
Wow, I know the house itself could have been producing the sound they couldn't hear but could feel.
It's a possibility. And finally, another environmental factor that sometimes gets mentioned, especially with older houses and potential heating system issues, is carbon monoxide poisoning.
CO poisoning, like from a faulty furnace.
Exactly. Low-level, chronic exposure to carbon monoxide can cause a wide range of neurological and psychological symptoms, including headaches, dizziness, confusion, paranoia, memory problems, and crucially, shared hallucinations. If the whole family was being exposed, they could genuinely all start experiencing similar, bizarre sensory inputs or feelings of paranoia.
And the fact that all the phenomena stopped the instant they left the house, that would fit with an environmental cause, wouldn't it? Like infrasound or CO. Once they were out of that environment, the symptoms stopped.
Precisely. It strongly supports an environmental or psychological explanation over a spiritual one that's tied to the location itself. So you have multiple plausible scientific alternatives to ghosts or hoax. Regardless of whether it was hoax, haunting, or hallucination, the story of Amityville absolutely transcended its origins. It didn't just stay a true crime story or a paranormal anecdote. It became a full-blown industry, a cultural machine.
It really did. Jay Anson's book was just the start, wasn't it? The 1979 movie adaptation that was massive.
Huge, starring James Brolin and Margot Kidder. It was an absolute cultural phenomenon, terrified audiences. And critically, from a business perspective, it became the highest-grossing independent film made up to that point, holding that record until 1990 with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, believe it or not.
Oh, that level of success guarantees sequels, right?
Oh, inevitably. Yeah. The success of the first film created this sprawling, multi-decade franchise. There are, over 20 films now bearing the Amityville name in the title: Amityville the Second, The Possession, Amityville 3D, Amityville, The Evil Escapes, Amityville. It's about time. It just goes on and on.
And most of those sequels, they have very little connection to the original DeFeo murders or even Lutz story, do they?
Very little. Often none at all, beyond using the name Amityville for brand recognition. They involve haunted lamp, haunted clocks, haunted houses nowhere near Long Island. The connection becomes incredibly tenuous. It's just about marketing the name.
And the fictionalization, even in the films based on the story, can be pretty rampant, sometimes even insensitive to the real victims, right?
Definitely. You mentioned earlier the 2005 remake, the one starring Ryan Reynolds. That film, for instance, includes a fictional child character named Jodie DeFeo, implying she was one of Ronald Jr.'s victims who maybe lingered as a ghost. But there was no Jodie DeFeo in the real family. It's adding fictional victims to a real tragedy for dramatic effect.
That feels uncomfortable. Exploitative, maybe?
It certainly blurred the lines in a way many found troubling. Yeah. And George Lutz himself, who was still alive then and had actually registered the Amityville horror as a trademark in 2002, he often fought back legally against the liberties Hollywood took with his family story, or what he claimed was their story.
He sued over the remake.
Yes, he sued the makers of the 2005 remake. He objected to numerous fictionalizations, but particularly, according to reports, a scene that showed the lead character based on him killing the family dog with an axe.
Killing the dog, was that ever part of the original story?
No, it was a completely fictional act of violence added for the movie, presumably to show the father's descent into madness. Lutz found it deeply offensive and damaging to his reputation.
Understandable. So, while Hollywood capitalized, what about the actual town? Amityville, New York. How have they dealt with being ground zero for horror tourism for 50 years?
Not happily, by all accounts. The source material consistently confirms that the residents, the local authorities, the business owners in Amityville, they are notably unhappy with the constant attention and the dark association.
They don't lean into it? No Amityville Horror Museum or ghost tours?
Absolutely not. They tend to decline requests from media or paranormal investigators to discuss the matter publicly. They just want to be a normal town. It's telling that the Amityville Historical Society, on its official website and in its local museum, makes absolutely no mention whatsoever of the 1974 murders or the 1975 haunting claims.
It's like a collective silence trying to erase that chapter.
It seems like a silence born of sheer exhaustion and frustration. Frustration over being perpetually tied to a brutal crime and a highly disputed, potentially fabricated ghost story that overshadows everything else about their community. Hashtag 5.2, the true cost of infamy. And the true cost of this relentless infamy. It's measured most directly on the loss of peace, the loss of privacy, for anyone unfortunate enough to actually live in that house after the story blew up.
The Cromarties mentioned the tourist being the only weird thing. Has it gotten better or worse over time?
It forced subsequent owners to take pretty drastic measures just to try and reclaim their lives and discourage the constant stream of sightseers, ghost hunters, and general gawkers. The house still exists, of course. It's still there on the water. But the owners had the official street address changed. It's no longer 112 Ocean Avenue.
They changed the number. Can you even do that?
Apparently, you can petition the town or county, especially under circumstances like this. It makes it harder for people just plugging the famous address into their GPS.
Smart move. What about the look of the house? You mentioned the eyes.
Yes, and critically, perhaps the biggest change to deter recognition. Those iconic architectural features, the quarter-round windows on the top floor that look like menacing eyes, the ones that became the jack-o'-lantern face on the movie posters. They've been removed.
I got rid of the eyes.
Replace them with standard rectangular windows. It makes the house look significantly less distinctive, much more anonymous. It was a deliberate attempt to erase the architectural memory of the horror, to make it blend in and hopefully be left alone.
A house trying to forget its own fame. Meanwhile, what happened to the man at the center of the original horror, Butch DeFeo?
Ronald DeFeo Jr. remained in prison, confined until his death. He died behind bars in March of 2021. He was 69 years old and had served over 45 years of his sentence.
Did he ever get parole or win an appeal?
No. All his attempts to appeal the conviction, including that 440 motion based on the fabricated stories, were denied. He maintained his shifting, contradictory claims pretty much until the end, never providing a single, consistent, or frankly believable explanation for the annihilation of his family. The official cause of his death in custody was never publicly released.
So he took the real why to his grave, potentially. Which brings us, I suppose, to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over after hearing all this. We've processed these two incredibly distinct narratives tied to one house.
Yeah, we've examined the meticulous, if sometimes puzzling, facts of the brutal crime itself. We've tracked the shifting, self-serving lies of the convicted killer. And we've delved into the detailed claims of the haunted family, claims which were largely, though perhaps not entirely, debunked by subsequent investigations and real-world evidence.
So what's the takeaway? Where does the real horror lie here?
That's the provocative question, isn't it? Maybe the real Amityville horror isn't the house itself. Maybe it's not the potentially fabricated ghost story, as terrifying as that narrative became. Instead, perhaps the deepest horror lies, firstly, in the profound, inexplicable human pathology demonstrated by Ronald DeFeo Jr., the capacity for such violence within a family.
The horror within.
Exactly. And secondly, maybe the horror lies in the way that house, just a normal suburban property, became this blank canvas, a screen onto which all these conflicting, desperate human needs were projected.
What needs are we talking about?
Well, you have the killer's apparent psychological need to rationalize his unforgivable actions, to blame victims, ghosts, anything but himself. You have the new family's potential need, whether conscious or subconscious, to rationalize their trauma, or maybe their financial decisions, or perhaps even a desperate bid for fame and fortune. And then there's the public's need, our insatiable need, maybe, for a story where evil has a physical address, a place we can point to, rather than confronting the more terrifying possibility that evil resides solely, and much more unpredictably, within the unstable minds of human beings.
That's a heavy thought, that the house isn't the monster, but maybe we needed it to be.
It's something to consider. This has been a true deep dive into those dual realities of 112 Ocean Avenue, the documented brutal murder of 6 innocent people, a fact beyond dispute, and the unsubstantiated yet incredibly culturally potent claim of a demonic presence that followed.
We really hope peeling back the layers of both the crime and the alleged haunting, looking closely at the source material, the evidence, the contradictions. We hope it gave you a clearer view.
Yeah, a clearer view of the established facts, the probable frauds, and maybe those genuine psychological mysteries and unanswered questions that still surround 112 Ocean Avenue after all these years. Okay, so we hope you liked our today's discussion. For more such discussions, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.